Welcome to Del Beccaro and Hook. I am Steve Hook. There's my buddy Tom Del Beccaro. We remind you to check us out on our landing page at delandhook.com. That's delandhook.com. And of course, YouTube, Rumble, Patriot.tv, X America News, and Uncensored American News as well. So we're everywhere. And if you're wondering, I didn't get any of those, just go to delandhook.com and you can find them. Well, Tom, it was a very, very tragic week this week. Of course, the plane accident involving the Black Hawk helicopter in D.C. over the Potomac is what's on everybody's lips right now for good reason. It's the biggest mass casualty plane event we've had in a long, long time. And not at all shockingly, the blame game is ramped up and it's in full gear. I am actually disgusted by the way this is played out. People say, oh, yeah, well, Trump is immediately... No, Trump didn't. The media is spinning this, and it really drives me nuts. There's one way that the media, and Tom, see if you don't agree with this, but there's one way that the media uses to deceive, and it's maddening. He has a meeting, he has a presser inside the Oval, and the press is gathered around him. And in that meeting, somebody in the press corps says to him, President Trump, do you think gender or race had anything to do with this accident? And then Trump said, I'm paraphrasing, but this is damn close to verbatim. He says, well, it may have, but we want the most competent, big-brained people in these positions. We must have the competence and big-brained people in this position. The media takes that little clip and then they blast the headline, Trump blames women and people of color for tragedy over DC skies. That's not what he said, but that's what the media reports. And the media reports that because they know that they're good little sheeple and they're good little lemmings that are looking for any excuses to hate Trump will latch onto it without bothering to check to see whether it's true because they so desperately want it to be true. Now, I bring this up, Tom, for a reason. I'm going to let you in here. I'm not trying to filibuster you here, buddy, but I just want to refer to an article from the Washington Times, and this is dated, by the way, February 1st of 2024. Headline, FAA turned away qualified air traffic controllers based solely on race. Going down into this article a little bit, I'll just read you this little bit and then we'll hand it to you, Tom. It's talking about this fella, Andrew Brigada, who is suing the FAA because he was rejected. And he says Andrew Brigada became the lead plaintiff in the lawsuit after his application was turned down despite his achieving a perfect 100% score on the AT-SAT test. Mr. Brigada's attorneys claimed there was a method to the madness. Race-hustling activist groups conspired with FAA officials to create a quiz so that they could let their members in on a little secret. Anyone could pass the biographical assessment test by answering A to all but one of the questions. More than 3,000 top-performing, motivated applicants lost out because they weren't members of this ethnic club. After Congress forced the FAA to drop the quiz in 2018, many former applicants reapplied and have since become controllers. But the point is, even back then, Tom, we were seeing how this DEI stuff is not only dangerous, it's racist, it's abhorrent to how most Americans view the world, but it's absolutely in keeping with the way progressive liberals see the world. I mean,
yeah, let's follow up with that. Pete Buttigieg, when he was transportation secretary, put out a memo that said the simple yet powerful mandate of equity and access in transportation will shape and drive all departmental programs and activities. The department simply cannot fulfill its mission without recognizing equity as a driving force, and I am committed to ensuring that all communities have meaningful access to our department programs and activities. So again, it will drive and shape all programs, as if social justice or social means and ends are the mission of the FAA.
Yeah,
obviously they're not.
It's absolutely maddening.
You and I have been talking about they don't seem to be learning a particular lesson. I want to point something out with everything on the left. which is basically they do things unless it, or say things unless it doesn't fit their narrative. Pay your fair share. Oh, the Bidens didn't pay their fair share. But the one I said after visiting during the inauguration is simply this. They want you all to drive an electric car. You know what will never be an electric car, Steve, ever?
What's
oh, yes. That would be the limousine that drives presidents around.
Yeah.
Why would that be? Because they could never run out of juice. They have to have gas, which starts up immediately in the cold and everywhere else.
Yep.
So again, for the most important, you remember when Tucker Carlson was talking to that Eric Swalwell about why Tucker's wife couldn't have a gun just like Eric Swalwell's bodyguard couldn't. It's always, you should do this, but we may not have to comply. Think about how during the hearings when Bobby Kennedy as Jr. as Bobby as Bernie Sanders calls him said that, why are you anti-vax? And what did Bobby Kennedy say in return? I'm not the one who exempted Congress from vaccines. Right?
It was a great answer.
Right? So here we have a situation where by the way, biology is merit-based. The species that survives on merit. And that's the only goal of biology, by the way, is to survive. Not on equity.
Yeah.
Survive.
Yeah.
America, early civilizations go on merit because that's how you stay alive, right? You don't sit down with an enemy at war and say, what about equity, as they shoot you, right?
Yeah.
And now that we're so rich, and I talk about this in my book, The Lessons of the American Civilization, over my shoulder. Now that we're so rich, we can only do what? Talk about what's fair, but what's fair isn't always safe. I'm all for creating equal opportunity. I'm not for taking risk with people's lives.
Exactly right.
We talk about how, I want the smartest mathematician designing my bridge. I want the smartest person in the riskiest situations.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going in for brain surgery, you're not very reassured if the head nurse comes up to you and says, look, your doctor did not necessarily pass in the highest, he wasn't in the top of his class or anything. But the good news is he's an Asian transgender. So feel good about it. And we're going to put you under now. No, that's not the way it works. And I would argue that air traffic controllers are just as important and have just as many lives in their hand as any brain surgeon does, and more at any one given time. So I find the whole thing is repugnant. And of course, Trump was right. We don't know. I don't know. He goes, I don't know. Maybe it did. And that is turned into he's blaming women and people of color. It's just absurd. It's ugly.
Yeah, blaming them both for one person's incident. Right. But look, what we did see this week, I think the biggest news this week was the Quinnipiac poll, which started asking people in 2008, how do you feel about the party? Right. The Democrats had a 31% approval rating, the lowest ever. Republicans had a 12-point advantage on them. Those who didn't like the Democrats or dissatisfied with them, 57%. That's a staggeringly high number. Right.
Yeah.
So why did they get there? Well, you usually earn those things. It's not the other party that does it to you.
You can say it's merit-based.
I like that. Yeah. I'm gonna steal that one in the rest of my shows. Yes, and so that's where they are, and part of that is that's their behavior, right? This is how they speak. This is what they do. And you see this in the confirmation hearings, the absolute, I don't know, whether it's lying or rudeness or the manner in which they literally raise their voice. Some would say yell at some of these nominees. And of course, all of the Trump nominees just sort of sat there and smiled and occasionally, jabbed back.
Yeah. Yeah, it is weird how this all ties in together, because you're right. The confirmation hearings have been, it's been like watching a soap opera. I mean, I loved Kash Patel when Klobuchar said to him, "I wish I had 5 hours. I would sit here and go over this entire transcript with you." And he goes, "You've got 2 minutes." And she said, "Wow." Or when Bernie Sanders called out RFK Jr. and then Bobby said, "Yeah, you've accepted more money from pharma than any senator alive," which is true. And he says, and he throws the caveat, no. I accepted no money from CEOs of any of the big pharma companies. That's just not true. No, you didn't accept money from CEOs. That's not the question. The question is, how much money did you get directly from big pharma? The answer is 1.9 million, 1.963, something like that. Damn near $2 million he's gotten over the course of his career. And by the way, folks, that outpaces every single senator inside DC right now. Hypocrites and liars. There you go.
Yeah, and then of course their argument is that you don't have enough experience. Look at their last health secretary,
Rachel Levine.
Yeah, what was the experience there? The experience was there is that the person was trans, and that was the reason they were picked. The person they chose to head FAA, how was he picked? He had no experience in aviation.
None.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Could you imagine picking the head surgeon with, and I realize it's a bit extreme, but no experience in the medical field? But this is where they are. They have a social agenda instead of the mission of that particular governmental entity is. And look, the fact that they stand up there and make these arguments and continue to make these arguments is going to continue to drive at least in my view, they're going to drive their poor poll numbers, because Americans are tired of that. They just voted on it. And we've been here 10 days, 12 days, and you're still harping on these same themes and saying that, this is the way it should be after you lost on those issues, and are seen as blocking Trump nominees for no good reason. And look, Bobby Kennedy has said some things over the years, but here's what I believe on vaccines. We should be checking them and their quality every year. Period. Full stop. We check cars every year.
Yeah.
But you don't put a car in your body.
That's right.
The 72 vaccines that they want young babies to take, you don't want to check that every year. And the only way to do that is to be a skeptic of big pharma, not to accept money from them.
Correct. And by the way, folks, we're going to wrap this segment up, but it's worth pointing out there's a reason, as Tom rightly points out, the election results, but there's also a reason that people have lost faith in government programs, whether it's the FBI, CIA, we talked about it last week, whether it's the CDC, National Institutes of Health, they've all crapped on their own reputations. And then they say, how dare you question us? Unbelievable. Anyway, we've got a huge show today. Tom, tell us about our guest.
Well, we have Congresswoman Spartz, who lived under communism and now is a hawk for America.
She is
meaning
she's a patriot,
its foundational principles, its future. Great guests. Join us right after this.
Yeah, we'll be right back with more Del Beccaro and Hook after this.
Welcome back, everybody, to Del Beccaro and Hook. We are particularly excited today because we're fans of our very distinguished guest, Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, who is amazing. She has accomplished so much in life, has an amazing biography, including being born in Ukraine. You've probably heard about the Ukraine in the news, right? But she was born there during the period of time that it was part of the Soviet Union, so under communism. She came to America and she's been nothing but a brilliant success, whether it's in the business field, in government, and also as a professor. So, Congresswoman, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I wrote a book, The Lessons of the American Civilization, and one of the chapters is called, and I'd love to get it to you, is called America, Capitalism, and Socialism. And America started out very limited government, a meritocracy, if you will. And over the years, especially within education, children and even adults have somehow been marketed that socialism is a good thing. I don't think they tell these children what the truth is about socialism, but I don't think there's any voice in American politics today more clear on the subject than yours. So how does that make you feel when you see this in schools or otherwise they try and impose socialist policies in America?
Well, unfortunately, Thomas, it's a sad reality, you know, but it is an inherent problem with all of the governments. And I think that's why our founding fathers created the structure to have a check and balances, and they want to make sure that we educate our children about what makes us the greatest country, because we were created by a group of people that were oppressed. Think about our history, we were lucky, right? Because a group of people came from oppressed environments, they wanted some liberties, they crossed the oceans in very tough times, and you know, and they wanted to create this republic, and from lessons of failed republic like Roman or Greek, you know, that will be, you know, living for people and having these freedoms for people and secure them by constitution. And that were fundamentals. And if we don't teach these fundamentals, unfortunately, our schools not teaching fundamentals, then very corrosive ideology that kill millions of people like Marxism, you know, is going to start prevailing, because this utopian idea are very easy to sell. You know, I actually when I was teaching at college, I taught accounting, but I always like to talk about economics because I was very surprised how a lot of my students didn't understand about a lot of economists. You know, I mean, you might like Karl Marx or you might like, you know, Friedman, Hayek or Keynes, but at least, you know, you need to know, like you might like, dislike. They didn't even know much. So I would sometimes start my classes and we talk about economists, and I would read Karl Marx and I would say, hey, you know, you contribute as much as you want, you work as much as you want, but you get as much as you want too. And they're like, well, that sounds very utopian. Well, it is utopian, but a lot of things are not taught. That all it does is centralizes power to very few on top, and then you create oligarchy, and at the end, you know, you have a ruling class. And I think that's what inherently government wants, and that's why, you know, our founding fathers wanted to limit power of the government and protect rights of individuals, and that is really make us the greatest country in the world.
Yeah.
So, music to my ears. We're gonna can that, make a commercial out of that, and send it to every schoolroom in America if they would just listen to that. But how does it make you feel that, I mean, why is it so many people like you who saw what socialism and communism are like, how does it make you feel that you know those things better than Americans who take this all for granted? That's what, you know, the reality is America takes all of these blessings for granted and somehow thinks it's better somewhere else.
Well, I think, you know, it's, you know, it's like you put a frog in the boiling water, you know, and frog is like, OMG, what's happening? Like this collective responsibility. I grew up with that stuff. And I've seen it in my short life. I thought like, oh my gosh, I grew up under socialism and communism. I've seen what happened when it fell apart, you know, and now we're building socialism. It's like full circle, you know, and that makes me very worried, you know, but a lot of people don't realize, because a lot of power is taken little by little, and government is very clever that we try to people more and more dependent, and then when people become very dependent and you weaken them with less rights, less knowledge, not teaching our kids to be strong and healthy and be independent thinkers, if we don't teach them key fundamentals of science that through history, of economics that have centuries, you know, of history and knowledge, you know, we teach them stupid stuff that doesn't even make sense, then we weaken them. Then they become easy to manipulate. They cannot differentiate through information. That's what typically governments do to oppress people. And unfortunately, inherently, governments have that desire to do, because it attracts not probably best the brightest most of the time. This is a reality. Best and brightest want to go make money, do business and do some things, don't want to deal with minutiae. So we need to teach actually more people to be involved in running for offices, engage in politics, because that's the only way you can keep republic strong, when you're better informed. And unfortunately, our mainstream media has been so corrupt, and they don't give good information, and school been corrupt. So I think this is a big challenge. The good thing about, what's happened with a lot of social media, with a lot of podcasts, a lot of different ways to get information, Americans are able now to consume different message, and a lot more Americans are waking up and understand that they've been betrayed by their own government.
Yeah, well, I must say, Congresswoman Spartz, you are a wonderful advocate for that, because I agree. I mean, a lot of people, some of the best and brightest, look at politics and say, I don't even want to get near that disaster. I don't want to be anywhere near that garbage, because I don't want to get my name and even more importantly, my family's name dragged through the mud by these muckrakers, in whether it's the journalist or frankly, even some of your your friends across the aisle. We've seen that with these confirmation hearings. It can be very ugly. I'm reminded of an old adage that a Marxist phrase is, from each according to their means and to each according to their need. Well, that sounds great until everybody, and you know what this leads to? Equity, folks. Now we're all equally poor. So once everybody is equally poor, then how do you take from each according to his means and to those who don't have as much? If everybody is scraping the bottom of the barrel, then what happens?
Well, and I think it's a sad reality, but that's what they want to do. And that's what they're doing right now. They want us to be equally poor, because then it's easy to manipulate. You're going to promise little handouts, and majority people, struggling. When you struggle, you're like, okay, I'll take something because I have to, keep my family fed. I have to survive. So people become easy then to manipulate. And that's what government does. And that's what they want. They want, oh, we'll take care of this, have all of these promises, and the socialism always runs out of money, right? But I think, unfortunately, these promises seems like easy. We inherently like, oh, it's easy to do nothing. I'm going to sit home and do nothing, and I'm going to get as much as I want, And they Karl Marx was like, oh, we'll have such a idealistic job and everyone is going to love job. Listen, I had a lot of tough jobs, and my husband, he gets all greasy fixing combine and working long hours day and night on the farm field. It's not that enjoyable, okay? A lot of jobs are, you have to work hard, So you don't have this utopian ideas. If you're a person with common sense, you're going to say, well, that's crazy. But we're not even teaching common sense. We're not teaching our children to think and question authority, question what they get. And I think that is really, the erosion in our education, but truly it's brainwashing. Like my kids from little age, since I'm busy mom, I drag them around with me to a lot of events. They've heard so many political speeches. They're like, oh, mom, not another one. They're like, but it's interesting being around adults by necessity. When they were teenagers, they're still teenagers, but like at school, they was like, oh, mom, just don't worry. They're brainwashing us. It's okay. Just don't worry about that. They can differentiate when they get lied to. They understand that it's some of these spewing lies to control them. But I think they become more mature individuals because they were exposed to these ideas, and we don't do it enough with our children.
I wonder real quick, Tom, let me just ask real quick, because she just brought in something. I don't want to forget it. One thing we know about this last election cycle was that it was the younger people that turned out for Trump, which I think probably shocked a bunch of Democrats. It certainly shocked the media. But Trump has regained his mojo with the young. Is that that's got to bode well for liberty? No.
I think so. And I think a lot more young people start realizing they're getting screwed by our debt and destroying their future. Somebody will be paying for all of this. It's just a matter of time, and they understand that they will not have these economic opportunities to advance themselves, the family, buying houses, building, their, family, the future. So they understand that they're going to have a very significant burden with no benefits to them at all. So I think a lot more of them struggling right now, unfortunately. And some of them now waking up and getting their head out of the sand is like, wow, this is like not good. It's not looking good for me. So I hope more young people, young people should be like revolutionary. Young people should be the ones like protesting in Congress. They should be the one and say, you're destroying our future. What are you doing to us? So I think President Trump brought a lot of hope to some of these young people that start paying attention, that they see the reality, that they're getting hurt economically. And I think this is something that we have to address, or we're going to destroy our future generations.
Yeah. So I have 36 trillion reasons to ask you this next question, of which you're perfectly situated. You said you taught accounting. You have a master's in business administration. We can't keep going on with this insanity of national debt. John Adams used to say the one way to enslave people is with debt. So what are the prospects for Doge and less spending for America this year and going forward, in your view?
Well, that's going to be a fight. Our government been wasting money and been truly corrupt, giving money left and right to a lot of oligopolies over there for a very long time. So these problems accumulated for decades. So we cannot fix it overnight, but we have to get this Titanic, off the collision course, at least start doing something. So I think, we have a responsibility, because we will have money for nothing very soon. We have every major fund is going insolvent. A lot of Americans are going to get hurt, and especially Americans with fixed income, low income, and add inflation on top. Interest rates growing, healthcare prices out of control. We will have no middle class, and really will be equally poor very soon. But the country is getting more and more poor, and we created a lot of oligarchs over there in DC. So we have to put stop to it, but there is a lot of money, and a lot of money bring a lot of attacks, media bought by them, right? So a lot of people are afraid, but we need to have some courage, and we need to decide if we're going to save this republic. That's our chance. Reconciliation, it's our real chance to get anything done, because unfortunately, we don't have too many good Democrats left now in the Senate. I hope we can even get enough Republicans to get to 50. But we will not be able to do any good reforms and get 60 votes. So reconciliation allows us to get things done with 50 or 51 vote, and we'll have to move the needle on that. But it's going to be a big fight, because unfortunately, even among Republicans, we have a lot of big spenders that care about having political career for the rest of their life, having jobs at lobbying groups, become rich in Washington, D.C., and they not really want to challenge the status quo in big money. So we have to force them, and it will take people putting pressure on Congress to deliver, or a lot of great things. And President Trump's legacy is not going to last very long if it's not delivered through Congress.
Yeah, here. We're spending so much money that just in the length of time you explained that, we're probably another 100 million in debt. And we laugh about that, but that's how quick we're going through money. It's like water going through our fingers. And to be fair, Congresswoman, and you touched on this, both parties are guilty of this. Democrats, I would say, over the long haul, have been considerably more guilty of it because they don't believe in any limits on government power and government reach. But Republicans have been pretty bad with it too. How much is K Street involved in this? And some of these kickbacks, we were just laughing in a segment before you came on, Congresswoman, that Bernie Sanders is giving Bobby Kennedy Jr. a real tough time about money and all this stuff. And Bobby Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr. said, you received more money from Big Pharma than any, I'm paraphrasing, than any politician inside the Beltway, to which he lost it. But factually, he was correct on that. K Street's really doing this, aren't they? They're going to put up as big of a fight as any of the politicians, I would imagine.
Of course, and that's what the whole reason a lot of Republicans are folding, right? They're afraid, because they understand that big money going to spend to sell lies, and unfortunately, percentage of people still believe these lies. But I think more and more people waking up, and I think it's our patriotic duty. We cannot let them win. We have to drain this swamp, and it's all about the money, and we have to have some courage. If we claim to care about our country, that's our duty. The good thing that we have a very tight majorities, so very few of us can hold the ground and make a difference. If it would have a plus 20 majority, this republic would have been lost. Now since we have only plus 3 and plus 4, and we have President Trump who is willing, to fight the fight and put pressure on Republicans to deliver. But I don't underestimate how hard it's going to be, because there are a lot of people that worry about their PAC checks, super PACs, and how much. If you're going to give them hundred billions of subsidy to some of these large corporations, in healthcare and pharma and insurance and hospitals, they're even the best. They don't even have to pay taxes; they're tax exempt. And I think somebody was mentioned they have a Corleone's doing the accounting. I think Bill Hammer was talking about that, but I think, and then they have hundreds, billions of dollars in subsidies, building Taj Mahals, investing in Wall Street. The executives get a ton of money, and doctors and nurses get paid less and less and get exhausted, but they're buying everything, by all doctor practices own 80% of them, but by law under Obamacare, doctors cannot even own a hospital. That's kind of was convenient, and it wasn't really. Democrats made a deal, with the swamp, give them enormous amount of money, and eventually they'll run out of money, and Bernie is going to say, what you see, markets are not working. Let's have a full government takeover of healthcare, because he understands you control healthcare, you control guns, you control the money, you control religion, you control speech, you control the people. You control education, you control people, so they understand that's how they want to have control of us and individuals. And they will reach that point where the system is going to go completely bankrupt, and then they will have an opportunity to do it. And they advance the agenda quite rapidly.
Yeah, I frequently say that socialism is never sold on the merits. It's sold by sowing fear in people, saying, if you don't vote for us, the other side will destroy you or is evil. And that's as old as time, and them doing that particular thing. So my question, though, is you started your career out and you got into American politics, and you're from another country, but it's inspirational and more people need to be involved with government. So what is your message there to people running for school board and otherwise to save this republic, as you put it?
I think it's our patriotic duty to pay attention, to be involved in whichever way you can, but pay attention what politicians doing, and never trust politicians. Always hold them accountable, and don't buy talking points and messaging, only by results, and get to know them. I was very lucky that when I started, in Tea Party, got involved, I got all upset how much government we had. We had a lot of this great generation of old Americans, like post-war generations that went through a lot of hardships. As a young person, my early 20s, I hang around with a lot of tough Americans. I learned a lot from them. They taught me a lot of tricks of politics, that I was able to become very effective, and took down a lot of politicians, but I think that was generation of Americans with this, the understanding what freedoms are, suffering through hard times, going through the wars, that remember that. And I think it's important for us to engage. And I think a lot of people, when they engage, and start looking, they're like, OMG, these people, like my husband, he was not much involved with politics before I got involved. He's like, wow, I thought politicians were bad. I'm like, gosh, they're much worse than I thought. And these people are in charge of us, tell us what to do. So, and I think that's important, because I know in this, and then find time in your life when you believe in some way, maybe you should contribute in some position. It could be elected position, it could be sitting on some boards, but really people that care and can contribute back and do it for the right reason need to be more involved in political process, because we accumulated a lot of bad people right now, with wrong agendas, both parties. My party is guilty. I think we have a lot of Marxists on the other side and hypocrites on my side. At least Bernie says he's socialist. We have a lot of socialists on my side that they're the same, just lying to the people. So it might be even worse, when they're dishonest. But I think it's important for us to make sure that, we keep our republic strong, because if we don't, there is no other hope, because something like what being created, just luckily, just in the time it was created, would be very hard, because we probably had 80% of people at that time with enormous appreciation for freedoms, that crossing oceans for freedoms, and and understood what oppression is. That's usually opposite. Usually have about 20 if you're lucky.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it does look like more and more people are waking up to that. My evidence of that is ratings for some of our cable networks are tanking. Ratings for the alphabet networks are tanking. Subscriptions to the Washington Post, New York Times, and pick a newspaper, they're all tanking. Now, there's a good side to that and a bad side of that. A good side of that is people are saying, I don't believe a word you're saying. The bad side of that is they go online and they just buy into anything they hear on TikTok or whatever. But I do think that I think the Great Awakening is starting to happen. I mean, just a few years ago, Congresswoman, a lot of people were saying, well, we are on the slow decline to the end of our republic as we know it. This election cycle and what's going on in the social zeitgeist of the way, just talking to people out and about, it seems like people are starting to appreciate what they almost lost. I mean, it's like the old line, you don't miss the water till the well runs dry. Well, the well was getting pretty empty, and now it's seeming like people are starting to take note of that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, the other side usually goes over the board to the extremes where like more people, OMG, right? So, but I think it's very important to make that correction and make that correction through the law to restore some of these rights, to restore some of the principles, to really have a much broader group of people, engage in the processes and be better informed and differentiate. Because one thing I've noticed, a lot of people from the swamp side, if before, they would always fight, like conservatives and Tea Party people, now I've noticed that they figure out it's much easier to like pretend that they agree with you, do nothing, and do like selling messaging, books, talking points, go do a little sponsorship for their events, and show up there. Oh no, I'm there with you, but behind the back, telling lies, So I think it's important that we start holding people, that promise us on these things accountable and deliver. Don't tell me talking, points. I don't need talking points. That's not changing my life. What are you actually doing for the people? What are you really fighting for? What are you standing for? And you actually deliver for the people you represent, not just for yourself or advancing your career. And it's very hard. As I said, there is no lobby for the people in Washington, D.C., just us. We're supposed to be the lobby. And if we are not doing that or afraid to do it, we'll go into big trouble. And I think that's why the money is the most important. It's all about the money.
Yeah.
So do you think Republicans are going to be hold it together? And we only have about a minute left, but do you think Republicans can hold it together and get this tax bill and the reconciliation done this year? Or are they going to fight more among themselves than with Democrats?
Well, listen, we have to deliver it. We have to have, this bill accomplished, but we have to do it right. We cannot just, create more slush funds and omnibuses and continue destroying the country. So we have to put pressure to deliver on the promises, deliver on the border security, deliver, keeping taxes low, but also deliver on spending. We cannot keep increasing national debt and deficits. We're spending more in interest in national defense already, and we'll be spending on this rate more than half, on interest of our revenue. So I think our situation is getting very dire. So I think we need to hold the ground and put pressure on some Republicans. But we had conference, and there are much more people who are very upset about the whole situation that leadership sought. So I think I have some hope, and hopefully we'll be able to hold the ground. But more people on my side waking up and understand that it's our patriotic duty to do the right thing and not to be afraid. So if we're able to prevail and put pressure on some other Republicans that wobbly, which I think we can, I think we should be able to deliver, and really what is very important for the country.
Right.
All right.
Great.
Well, we've run out of time. Congresswoman, I'll never forget the first time I saw you speaking on TV at a committee hearing meeting, and I said, "Wow." And my thoughts about you shall remain wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're impressed by you, and thank you for your love of country and the principles of America. So thanks for coming on today, folks, Congresswoman, and we'll be back right after this.
Thank you. Thank you. May God bless you. Thank you.
All right, welcome back to Del Beccaro and Hook. We appreciate you being there. Of course, we encourage you to always be there by going to delandhook.com, delandhook.com. You can find all the links to all of where you can find us, and we've gone through the laundry list, YouTube, Rumble, Patriot.tv, American X News, and of course, Uncensored American News. Boy, Congresswoman Spartz was, well, she's just as patriotic as you would ever want. And yeah, I think it's telling, Tom, that someone who lived in a former Soviet bloc country would embrace America as tightly as she has. I think that kind of,
yeah, very often those who legally immigrate here are the biggest proponents of America versus those who grew up here and take it for granted. And that's what you see at all different levels, or they hate America because they think America isn't the land of opportunity that it should be, even though comparatively it's done better than any place on earth. So I don't know where these people are going to go to get more opportunity to criticize their own government, which, by the way, try that in England these days, not working out particularly well, which is, this atmosphere, there's little margin of error with regard to the Republicans in these hearings.
You're damn right. That's a very good point, because we know that they've got a very, very slim majority over there. Hell, last week, Hegseth got confirmed only because J.D. Vance came and cast the tie, broke the tie. We'll see how it goes. Last week, we were talking about some of these confirmation hearings that we are now witnessing this week. Just right off the top of my head, I would say that Kash Patel acquitted himself very well. I thought he was great. He was unflappable. Tulsi Gabbard, who was a big question mark, and still is, frankly, I thought she handled herself pretty darn well. I really do. I think she was pretty darn good about it. And as far as RFK Jr. goes, that's, I guess, a toss-up at this point, kind of like Gabbard. But I thought she was good. So I don't know. I think, Tom, we were talking with the Congresswoman and you and I were talking off air. This first, we always talk about the first 100 days. Well, it hasn't even been the first 20 days, and we're starting to see some pretty big moves from the Trump administration. And this is going to be a test for the GOP. And I think these confirmation hearings are kind of the petri dish, and we're watching it right now. Will they have the testicular fortitude to hang in there and confirm these folks? I remind everybody, Biden got all of his nominations confirmed without a problem, because that's how Republicans do. Democrats never do that, but will they hang in, Tom? Will they hang in? This will be the true test, won't it? Cassidy came out and started saying, I don't know if I can vote for him. He came under withering assault on social media after saying that, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's starting to backtrack a little bit. But this is going to be the acid test for this Republican Senate going forward with these confirmations and seeing how it works. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if we're looking at Bobby Kennedy, Susan Collins, interestingly enough, talked about how important the issue of Lyme disease is to her constituents. And Kennedy told a terrible story. If you've ever known someone with Lyme disease, it's
no fun.
It's really rough. And they seem to connect on that. Kennedy connected with Murkowski with regard to Native Americans in Alaska. Apparently, he has a very long history connecting with them and helping them. So I don't know what grounds she has to say no to him. So that would mean that it would have to be other Republicans who desert him instead of them. So I wasn't aware of the depth of that. So I think it'll be interesting, but I think he gets through. Kash Patel, I think he gets through as well, even though he's said some rough things. What are Republicans going to say? That he's not experienced, even though he was number 2 at DOD or chief of staff, kind of thing. That's pretty heavy responsibility. And also,
he wrote the Nunes report. I mean, he wrote it.
Yeah, so he's good. Tulsi Gabbard, I was a little disappointed in some of her answers. That relate also the Fourth Amendment. I couldn't understand why she, I don't know if you watch Cornyn's cross-exam of her, and that's a Republican, and I thought he was giving her easy questions, and she didn't.
Yeah, she
seemed to want to pick up on it particularly well. There's a fair amount of Republicans who are concerned about the fact that she was in Syria or her connections to, quote, communism as a teenager. So I think if I would rank there, the most troubled is Gabbard.
Yeah.
Although I'm not saying she's not going to make it. Then I would say Kennedy, and then I would say Kash Patel.
Yeah.
And everybody else will sail.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see how it plays out. I do think you're right. There were a couple of things that were Tulsi Gabbard when she couldn't give a direct answer on Snowden. That was a little bit troubling, and that's going to.
All of them have this problem. And it's because of the way the question is being framed to them.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I posted about, sarcastically, you can't fix government unless you're from government, right? All of them know that there was great trouble with the last election with voter integrity. There is. Voter fraud is as old as voting. It is a constant battle. And that has to be, they have to say, look, I'm for increased voter integrity. Who's against? Well, we know. But rhetorically, and keep in mind, 77% of African Americans, 78% of Latinos, and 81% of Americans are for voter ID. So they need to cast it and respond to these things a little bit better, but because they're getting caught in, well, did Joe Biden win? That kind of thing. But even so, they're fighting through it. But at the end of the day, the Democrats say, oh, you can't get there unless you've already been there. And the point of that, of course, is Ronald Reagan never would have won if that was the litmus test. Experience in Washington. No, we send governors to Washington to clean up Washington, not to play along with Washington. And I hate, using the word Washington is driving me nuts these days, because George Washington would never go along with all this stuff that's going on.
Well, just to underscore your point, Tom, the most experienced politician in Washington just lost his reelection. I mean, Biden, you could argue that he wasn't the best, and he certainly wasn't, but he'd been around longer than just about anybody inside the Beltway. And how great did that work out for the nation? I think the one line of attack that I think Tulsi Gabbard gave that I thought was good, it was her opening statement where she basically said, they called me a puppet of Putin. They called me a puppet of Assad. They called me a puppet of Iran or whatever. I forget. She put a few lists. She goes, what they're really angry about is I'm not going to be their puppet. I suspect that any cabinet position that Trump fills, and we know that he has an itchy trigger finger, if he sees one of them step out of line, they're gone. RFK Jr., there's a lot of stuff that he's said that I don't agree with, but if he stays in his lane, if they can keep him in his lane, and I think he's willing to accept that role, I think he could be I think he could be great with the Department of Health. Gabbard,
well, look what already is happening. We've never had this much discussion about breakfast cereal ever.
Yeah,
right.
True.
And nor have we had this much discussion about onesies.
Just absurd.
And or vaccines. And look, I defy anyone to tell me that a baby needs 72 vaccines out of the gate. And
Is healthy,
you know,
yeah.
there's a national program, by the way, folks, for people where the federal government funds assistance for those harmed by vaccines. It's out there. It's a thing. But medicine should be improving. And if you don't shine the light on manufacturers of anything,
Sure.
from jeans to cars to laundry detergent, right? Laundry detergent, they've been shining the light on it, and now they have less abrasive or drying out and all these things to the human skin, right?
Yeah.
How did that happen? Because we shined the light on it. Are you, you know, the idea that we should let big pharma march wherever they want to go, and therefore it's okay. It just drives me nuts. Of course, we need to be looking at that. The left's embrace of big pharma is, to me, is easily one of the most hypocritical things of all time.
Yeah, especially Mr. Independent himself, Bernie Sanders, having accepted more money than anybody inside the Beltway. Pretty staggering, really.
They are aligned with the biggest industry, one of the biggest industries in the world, and they get government benefits. So don't ever tell me you care about the little guy. Yeah, ever.
Exactly. They've got gold-plated private insurance policies for every member of Congress and all of their staff members. Pretty upsetting. And you know, Tom, you just recently came back from Europe after your honeymoon. I was there earlier in the summer. I'll say this, the food in Europe, they don't have all these additives and crap that we have here. I had a huge bowl of pasta and I felt great. I wasn't like, oh my God, I got to take a nap. You know, oh, well, that's just anecdotal. Yeah, it's anecdotal, but they don't allow these food dyes. They don't allow a lot of these additives. And we need to get that sorted out. I think Bobby would do that. It's going to be interesting to watch. How long do you think it's going to take? We've only got a little bit of time here, Tom. How long do you think it's going to take before we get an answer for these last three confirmations?
Well, they're not. There's still other people to go, like a Doug.
I know, but I'm talking about the three we've been discussing.
It'll happen before the end of next week, and I still think all of them will get through.
I do too. Well, there you go. Everybody, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for joining us today on Del Beccaro and Hook. We remind you to go to delandhook.com, delandhook.com. Tom, I don't know if you look at the website, it's wonderful. It's one of the most easy to navigate pages ever. And you can find all, what?
Did our producer do a good job or what?
Absolutely brilliant job. And it was, and it really is good. So if you're saying, gee, I wonder what they think about this, that, or the other, delandhook.com, that's where you can find out. Until next time, thanks for watching. Goodbye.